What's going on, guys? So I had this in my last video that I uploaded on YouTube. Cars on the dyno. It's a Holley sniper setup. I tune a lot of these. I actually work with another local shop where I tune a lot of their muscle cars on this setup. So might not see a ton here, but I do tune these systems. So right now we're having an issue with this car. Basically it's acting funny. At a certain RPM it wants to break up, but it doesn't want to break up all the time. It seems like heat is a big factor now, with the Holley system, and it's running the electronic distributor too. The system does, it's a nice system, but it does have some flaws. Besides that though, I got a plug pulled out. Actually pulled out two spark plugs. And we're going to ultimately see if we can focus. So got two issues with this spark plug. The first spark plug I pulled out, the same thing. So there's actually oil all over here. That is all wet oil. You can see it on my fingernail now. The other issue too that's not good is you can see it's actually cracked. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the rest of the cylinder. I want to pull a couple more cylinders out, see if they got oil on them. The oil's not dripping down from the actual valve cover either. So it's not like it's dripping down the valve cover and then into the hole. It's actually coming inside the hole, which means it's seeping some oil inside the actual chambers. So in this case, I'm going to smooth out the tune as best as I can. No sense of keep on pushing it and trying to get the last drop of power out of it. If you've been following me and watching my videos, there's no sense of hurting the motor. We can see that it's already hurt somewhat to a point if it's leaking that kind of oil, and it's really hard for the camera to pick up, especially with the door being open on this beautiful day. But it's a good amount of oil. It's not just a little. So I'm gonna see how many more spark plugs we might need to replace. I'm gonna try to get some of those, finish the tune up. I'll get a quick video of it on the dyno and running, and we'll go from there. So just a little, definitely inside or behind the scenes that you don't see every day. Normally you just see the video of the car on the dyno, but you don't get to see the fun stuff that we encounter when I say we, tuners in general. And luckily this just happened to be the second plug that I pulled, but I definitely want to inspect a little bit more. The other stuff too, it is leaking some fluids on the dyno. We do have a dyno checklist that we tell people, preferably we don't want it to leak fluids. I'm not a super strict person to a point where it's like, oh, your car's leaking, get it off my dyno. I'll have to clean up the floor. Sometimes you can charge a cleanup fee on that, but I try not to. This one's not too bad. But yeah, so just some real behind the scenes footage action of what's going on this lovely, beautiful Saturday. So the other thing too I noticed that's pretty interesting, actually there's two things. So number one, look how that header is bent. I'm not sure if the company that actually makes these headers actually did that, but that's never good for performance. But the other thing that I noticed originally was on this one that we take off. And whenever you're taking off spark plug wires, number one, they have tools. Number two, you always grab them from here. You don't grab them by the wire. So if they're actually on, you're gonna grab them and pull. So you don't pull on this piece that's hanging. So when I went to put this back on, I noticed that the piece is supposed to be all the way back in there. Now I don't know if you can make your MSD I think has kits where you can make your own. So someone maybe possibly didn't make these 100% and they didn't crimp them down on this one. The other ones seem good from what I can get to. This spark plug, I don't even know if you can even see it, but it's almost impossible to get to. The other ones all came off good and went back on fine, but this one not so much. So I'm gonna have to redo this for them. I'm also not a huge fan of MSD products. Over the many of years, we've seen a lot of fail rates on a lot of their stuff. They do have a great markup though. That's why a lot of shops will sell them and push them because they make a good amount of money on them. But yeah, So got this to do too. So on top of that, this car just got dropped off, and I was still here today. I wasn't supposed to be here, but the hatch didn't lock. So I pulled off the inside panel, and I locked it by hand, which I'm not a locksmith, so that was fun. That took about 15 extra minutes out of my day, but now somebody can't get in and have easy access to this car. So once again, stuff you do not see. We don't want people stealing from our cars, and we want our customers protected. This door handle's already broke, but all locked up. Back to Chevelle. So going over the plugs here, and noticed the boot was white. So, you know, of course it's seeing a good amount of heat resting on the header. So I actually pulled it off here, and you can see how it's just rubbing through. So definitely not good for anything. And you know, at this point I was just trying to, I got the one wire fixed over there. We got our own little tool because we make wires here from time to time on special projects. I got the one fixed, so now I'm gonna have to see what I can do with this. You know, it's gonna probably arc on the header nonetheless. I mean, that might actually, you know, I don't know if that's a combination of maybe the heat, but maybe this thing is arcing on the header as well. And like I said, it's only at certain times, so when, you know, it gets really hot in the engine bay, then it starts to act funny. And a lot of times, you know, as I think I was saying in the one video, I'm not a fan of MSD stuff. I just never have been. You know, when MSD, the reps come here and, well, you make great markup on them. Yeah, but, you know, selling a customer shit, that's not going to last. And this was going back to in the Honda game. Everybody back in probably maybe like, I don't know, 2005-ish, everybody had the MSD stuff on their Civic, and it was nothing but issues and nothing but problems. And it was to a point where, you know, that enough just made me not want to sell the product. I don't care how much money I make on a product. I don't care at all, and I've said this many of times, if the product is crap and it's not going to last. That being said, I'm not saying this is an MSD fault by any means, but I don't prefer MSD wires, and nor do I prefer some of their products. There's one product here or there that does work. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying all their products they don't work and whatnot, but you know, most of the times too, the guys that back in the day that had them on their Civic didn't even need them. So unfortunately, other places or shops, whatever you want to say, were selling them parts they didn't need, that wasn't doing anything. That was going back in the magazine days, which, if you're old enough to remember, Nology, I believe, is the one spark plug wire company that you would see everywhere in magazines, and they had the grounding strap for the Civics that came off and, you know, always claimed it added power. Of course, if you know anything, then you know that's adding power type deal. Just sell a product as a gimmick in a sense. So now we're gonna see what we can do with this to try to finish the tune-up. At this point, just trying to avoid having to pull it back off and put it back on the dyno, but at the same time, I don't want to get too backed up on my tuning schedule. So there comes a point that I do have to pull it off and keep on working. So I got a new spark plug wire on here, provided by Wade over here, who's not a... so I called up Wade because he lives close by, and he actually pulled it off of his truck. And the support I get from Wade's a customer / friend. He became a real good friend. So he pulled it off of this truck that he's madly in love with. And he says if it melts and he fucks up the wire itself, he said he'll drive home on 7 cylinders. So love to have customers like that. I mean, it really means a lot. I called him up and said, hey, I'm in a little bit of a bind. Can you help me out? And he said he had extra spark plug wires, but I didn't know he was going to actually pull it from his own truck. So let's see if I can finish up the tune here. So gonna call it a night here. Wade just put his spark plug on, and he's about to head home in his truck. And pretty much got done as much as I can do. At this point, he's gonna want to upgrade some of the wires. Seeing how that one is probably shorting out, and then the other oil issue is something to look into too. So the oil in the spark plugs is never a good thing. Not good for performance. So I'll put a video in between here of this thing running and idling, and I got a couple of videos of it on the dyno too. So actually making a rolling on the dyno, I should say, making a pool. But that's going to be it for the night. As you can see, it is dark out. It is Saturday. It's about 7:30ish, and yeah, just the stuff busting ass here to get things moving and keep them moving and keep things in and out and keep on going. On to the next one, guys. So I am back on this beautiful day today. Got a lot of stuff going on, and we have this car that you've seen previous videos, and now that it's nice out, we can actually work outside. So we expand the location even more. So we actually have some tents and canvases, so when it really gets hot out, we can be underneath those. This one came in for a routine throttle position sensor replacement, but the throttle replacement sensor screw broke off inside the throttle body, and we couldn't fix it and save it, so we're waiting on that to come. This car that you saw, as I said in previous videos, we're doing a once over real quick before the dyno, and there's a couple things that I already talked to the customer about and got to get some prices for them, but we don't recommend the fuel regulator on the rail. It's a really weak point, and on top of that, you can see Teflon tape being used, and on AN fittings, you're not supposed to use Teflon tape. So depending on the fuel rail and how it's set up, it's a weak point. If it were to break, it's gonna shoot fuel everywhere, and if it shoots fuel by this downpipe, you're gonna catch the car on fire, and it's gonna burn down to the ground. So other little issues that I see, this is a knockoff wastegate. Gonna have no clue what springs are in there, so we're gonna be taking a gamble, and hope for the best. Just noticed that they're sealing around the exhaust manifold, which shouldn't be, which is interesting. Vacuum hoses can use some tightening up, or updating. The clear hose looks cool, but it's not meant for high heat applications, and it will become very soft and actually collapse. So we're going to want to do that. We'll cap this off with the right cap instead of a bolt. The PCV system, positive crankcase ventilation, is actually, it either looks still hooked up, but we want to eliminate that. If you boost past the PCV, it's going to boost underneath in the crankcase and boost on the bottom of your pistons, and that's going to cause ultimately a quick piston failure. The other thing I noticed, and I got to mention to him too, the oil pressure sending unit. Looks like he has an oil pressure gauge. You don't want to hang that off the block like that. Those bigger sending units that you're seeing down there are more so for like V8 cars, where they would plug right into the block. Hondas don't actually have NPT on the block. You have to use a BSPT, which stands for British Standard Pipe Thread. It's very complicated, but when you start hanging stuff off the block like that, if that thing were to crack the block, your block's going to be garbage. You can get it welded and hope for the best, but normally it's not something that you want to mess with on that. Besides that, what I did notice too was the intercooler at one point does appear to be mounted. There's brackets underneath that I can kind of see, but when I do this, when I move the intercooler pipe in, you can see it's not really mounted securely. So that's going to be going to want to take care of that. It's going to ultimately not do any good. Sorry with my finger. Everything, so it's a knockoff turbo manifold, knockoff wastegate, knockoff turbo, no-name brand, which I can assume this is a no-name knockoff HKS style blow-off valve. Notorious for leaking, can't really do anything about it. So we're giving him a heads up. We'll also give him a price on a brand new HKS, a good one, if he wants to replace it. If he wants to take the gamble too, on the dyno, he could take that gamble. Same with the wastegate. Doesn't have to necessarily replace it, but if it's got like a 20-pound spring in there, or it hits 20 psi, could be some trouble. No way to control that, so not knowing beforehand. The other thing with the injectors, no name 1000 cc's. which is an issue because they don't come with spec sheets, they don't come with dead times, and if you've been watching my videos and you know all about the dead times. So yeah, little once over on the car just to find some stuff before it goes on the dyno. Ultimately, when it's on the dyno, we want to make sure it's 100% and that it's good to go, and that we don't have to put it back on the dyno, because time is money, and goes back on the dyno, you gotta pay. So some cases you don't. I do help people out and I put it back on the dyno, sometimes for free or at a discounted rate, but if we're going to take a gamble here, it's going to be one of those things. But the customer did inform me. It sounds like he wants to get it all replaced, so we'll let him know the prices on that and kind of go from there. So you can see the old throttle body from the Explorer, how the bolts don't want to come out, they're seized. Throttle body is actually not that much money, and it comes with the TPS on there and this other sensor. So, I mean, at this point it is what it is. He had to get a new throttle body. This was for the Ford Explorer. I have them on the display case over here. So, also the wheel sensor was acting up. I've talked about this in a couple other videos. You can see how the wheel speed is all gunky. It's trying to focus. There you go. So, you can see how gunky it is. And then on top of that, since this does sit ultimately in the wheel well, the wires are frayed, which wasn't helping. It was actually getting no wheel speed sensor at all. We were able to pick it up on our scanner on this one. Replaced it. ABS code light is off on the dash now, so that's fixed as well. Got a little bit of a coolant leak that's coming from the thermostat housing area, so we'll see if he wants to get that replaced. But just focusing on that, we also do routine maintenance. Not pretty, not fun, not cool to look at, and you know, usually not what people want to be looking at and, you know, on Instagram on their after work, you know. So there you go. We'll save that for the customer so he can see that too.